Consent that further calling of the roll be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I stand here today, I am trying to figure out what our activities here look like to the average American. They know that we've got serious economic problems, that though we are on a good track, and I think it's fair to say that we're feeling a little bit better. But we were cautioned by President Obama the other day, those of us who had a chance to sit in a room with him, that while things are looking up, there's still a long way to go before our people are back to work and before they can afford the basics that they need to take care of their families. And while this is going on, and we've seen the most incredible courage, the most well-developed military plan imaginable, and the courage of our people who went in there. And thank goodness nobody hurt. Job well done. And the execution of a man who helped kill almost 3,000 people at the World Trade Center, hundreds more in other attacks on American facilities, the embassy in Tanzania, the embassy in Kenya, the ship, the USS Cole, taking American lives. And that's what their determination was to do. And our President, President Obama, after lots of years of previous administrations looking at things, trying to figure out what to do to stop these terrorist attacks on America, President Obama had the courage to make a decision that would have rested so heavily on his ability to govern, to take the risk, knowing that our people were so well trained, so well committed, that the chances of their failure was very slim but very real. And so good things have happened in America. I think not only did we succeed in at least slowing down, if not eliminating, some of the terrorist threat that we have in America, it also lifted the spirits of Americans across the country. All felt better about it because we fought back against this terror threat. And so when I look at where we are and listen to the debate, look at what the House of Representatives has done with their majority in terms of, at this point in time, when we are still reeling from shock, having had perhaps the greatest recession since the Great Depression of the 20s and 30s. And instead of trying to figure out ways to solve the problems, our colleagues on the Republican side are trying to figure out ways to punish the public, to say to them, okay, so you don't have enough jobs. Well, we're going to try to reduce the possibility that we will have enough, to reduce the possibility that a person who can learn but isn't well off can get an education. They want to take away those opportunities. They want to take away programs that have succeeded. When you look back, Mr. President, at our history in the last 90 years, and you ask, how did we get here? How did we get where we are? 400,000 Americans were killed in World War II. The planning during President Roosevelt's days in the New Deal. The planning that President Johnson offered when we had programs earlier. We had Social Security developed. and then came Medicare, and then came Medicaid, programs that help people. And on a personal basis, for me, those years I'm talking about, were particularly significant. I was born to a poor family, and my father found it very difficult to earn a living, as did millions of other Americans. He worked in a factory, silk factory in the city of New Jersey, Paterson, New Jersey, and he worked there. And he was a man very conscious of his health. But the problem was that the environment was such that he contracted cancer when he was 42. He died when he was 43 years old. And his brother, working in the same type of facility, he died when he was 52. My grandfather, who worked in the mills, died when he was 56 years old. And that was life as I saw it. Things were bleak. My mother was a 37-year-old widow, and she had to carry on through my father's sickness. They bought a store to try and make ends meet. Didn't do very well, but it kept her going for a while. But when all was over and my father died, I was already in the Army, already enlisted in the Army, and my mother had no resources left. She owed doctors, owed pharmacists, owed hospitals. Every penny she had was gone. And I looked at this experience and I thought, something not fair here, but I was lucky. I was able to get my education under the GI Bill, as did 8 million other people who wore the American uniform during those dark days. What happened? I got an education. I went to Columbia University. I was lucky. My tuition was paid for. I even got some money for books and some things that I might have needed along the way were provided, and made a world of difference. Made a world of difference, Mr. President. I was able, with two friends, to start a business. The company is fairly well known. It's called ADP. We started with nothing, three of us. Their father also, two brothers with whom I was associated. Their father also worked in the factories of Paterson. They were immigrants, as were my grandparents. But along came this educational opportunity, and with that came an opportunity to start a business. And today, that company, ADP, is one of the four most credit-worthy companies in the United States. They're listed, three-star companies. ADP has 45,000 employees. 45,000 employees. And we work in 21 countries. Most of the operation is in America, but lots of it outside. And here we employ over 40,000, 45,000 employees and help businesses by taking over a particular part of their record-keeping needs. So we help making things more facile, better operating in the country. And every month now there is a labor statistic that's printed, that's put out. It's done by ADP, my old company. And our numbers are more reliable than those of the Bureau of Labor Statistics because the data are fresher. Every week, some 35 million people get their paychecks through, and they. I left we when I came here 27 years ago, or 29 years ago. So an America that gave people like me a chance to do things and created what is called the greatest generation in the history of America. And now, Mr. President, I'm beginning to see what I consider is a great generation developing. the number of people that are getting to work, the fewer claims for unemployment insurance. There's more spending, more consumer spending. Retail sales are up. The signs are good. And so, Mr. President, when I look and I see what's going on in the House of Representatives, the stubbornness of our colleagues, as I see it, to step in and say, look, we have to keep the government strong. We have to make sure that we supply the kind of energy to the government, to the administration, that can move America along. And their response is cut, 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 when all the other social programs that I mentioned were expansion of government services. And thusly, what's happened is we want to cut, they want to cut. I'm not one of those who wants to cut. I'm one of those who wants to reduce the deficit. Mr. President, when you look at a balance sheet, a financial statement, it carries two parts. One part is expenses, costs, and the other part is revenues. And you can cut expenses all you want, but if the revenues don't improve, you go bankrupt. Pretty simple. And that's where we're being asked to put our future on the line. Hold the debt ceiling as ransom? For what? For what? It will destroy the confidence in America, will destroy our ability to be the country we are, the country that leads the world still despite competition. So when I left home this morning, Mr. President, I passed an Exxon station that's fairly near my home. There was a sign on the pumps that said, that gave you the price of gas, almost $4.79 a gallon, $40.90 a gallon. And for people who have any distance to travel, this is painful. This is painful. This is part of the income that they can use for basic things that are needed. And what do we see? We see major gasoline companies, and we ask ourselves, who are our colleagues? Whose side are they on? It appears that they're on the side of the gasoline companies. I think we ought to be more conscientious about this and make sure that the public understands that we are there for them, for the majority of the people in this country who are sick and tired of seeing the price gouging that we have seen from the gasoline companies. And we asked the question, and there was a Finance Committee hearing today, and I saw much of it through television, and saw how the heads of these companies, five companies, big oil, big gas, what are they worried about? Well, they're worried about, and it was even said in it's kind of a caustic comment, that it might be un-American to take away the subsidies that these people get. $4 billion a year, $4 billion a year, and they're worried about the subsidies they get. When you look at what it is that is going on with these companies, you see astounding results. And make no mistake, greed is fueling their appetite. And the bigger it gets, the more they want. And during the years that we talked about in World War II, that I talked about in World War II, there was a tax, excess profits tax, that said that companies shouldn't be feeding off of the opportunities that the war presented and take advantage of the public. Mr. President, we're at war. In case people forget about it, Afghanistan is a real war. We still have the remnants of difficulties in Iraq. And we've got piracy on the seas, and we've got all kinds of things that we have to keep fighting for. So there ought to be some recompense for our country for the opportunity they have to make this kind of money. Here, these are during the first 3 months of 2011, which is still part of the recession time. Exxon, over $10 billion in a quarter profit, $10 billion. Shell, almost $9 billion. BP, $7.1 billion. That's after their foul mistake in the Gulf of Mexico that cost plenty of money. They still made that kind of money. Chevron, $6.2 billion, and little Conoco, they only made $3 billion in the quarter. And look how much these CEOs are paid. And when you think about it, the irony is that how well BP has done, a company that's spewed 200 million gallons of oil into the ocean last year. And why is our government shoving billions of dollars into the pockets of their executives, their lawyers? Why don't we use the money to invest in stronger America? Pay down our debt. I'd like to see us doing that. But big oil's greed is helping to inflate our deficit, and every day Americans are footing the bill. You'd think our colleagues on the other side of the aisle would want to put a stop to this madness. Step up for the average person. Well, so far, we're not doing what we'd like, what I speak for those who agree with me, what we'd like to see being done for the public, for the average citizen. Big oil is doing everything in its power to protect its subsidies, and the Republicans are doing everything in their power to help them. The Republicans say eliminating these wasteful subsidies will raise gas prices, and that's wrong. It's plain wrong. And we look at the compensation of the CEOs here. Now, they're not selling pretzels or making potato chips. They're dealing with a commodity that's essential to the functioning of our society, of mankind. The CEO at Exxon, he got $29 million. ConocoPhillips, $18 million. Chevron, $16 million. These are all in 2010 for the year just recently concluded. So we want to assure that, make certain that people understand that companies who pay their fair share in taxes isn't going to hurt the industry. Just means big oil executives may have to make do with a smaller swimming pool, or maybe smaller yacht, but no real pain or punishment there. The fact of the matter is the big oil CEOs aren't feeling this recession. And instead of making our government more fiscally responsible by ending big oil's big giveaway, the Republicans have another idea. They want to cut the deficit by ending Medicare as we know it. Won't save us any money in the long term. It'll simply increase the expenditures many are forced, can't afford, and are forced to rely on Medicaid and other community programs for their health. Seniors are struggling. The big oil companies aren't. And I wish that the other side would listen a little more closely to the wishes of the American people. Almost 3/4 of the Americans say stop giving billions in tax breaks to the big oil companies each year. The American people know that these subsidies are unnecessary, ineffective, and immoral. And it's not like the oil industry is taking its $4 billion, annual $4 billion windfall and investing it in our country's future. No. In addition to going into the paychecks of the big oil executives. This money is being used to line the pockets of the industry's lawyers and lobbyists who are seen frequently and obviously around here. Well, I've seen this time and time again during my career in the Senate. I was the first senator on the scene at the Exxon Valdez when it rammed into the Alaskan shoreline in 1989. And when instead of being forthcoming and do what they should have done, Exxon fought over every penny with the communities in Alaska, the families and the fishermen whose lives it destroyed. Instead of stepping up to pay the court-awarded damages, $5 billion, Exxon said, to heck with that verdict. We'll fight it. We'll fight it all the way. And they did. For years, knocked down the amount from $5 billion in punitive damages to $500 million. And I guarantee you, they paid a heck of a price to the lawyers and lobbyists, but they'd rather give it to them than give it to the American people. That's what the way it shows. In the end, it took more than 20 years for Exxon to pay for what it had done. Some victims died while waiting for the company to make things right, and we should not be giving big oil $4 billion in tax breaks each year. Their profits exceeded for the year last year $100 billion, these companies, larger than lots of countries. We should be investing in ways to break our dangerous addiction to oil. We should be investing in innovative approaches to moving people and goods, including increasing funds for transit, creating a world-class high-speed rail network, and expanding the number of things like electric cars on our road. We should also boost our company's promising clean energy industry, making sure that we lead the world in the export of environmental products that are proudly stamped "Made in the USA" label on them. And don't be fooled. Drilling will not, in the final analysis, get us out of our energy problems. We use almost a quarter of the world's oil, but we sit on less than 3% of the world's reserve. So drilling is going to just quickly bring the end of our ability to produce oil, and that will be the conclusion. According to the United States Energy Information Administration, even if we open every offshore drilling area in the continental U.S., the average price of gasoline would drop by just 3 cents a gallon by the year 2030. And here we see it. The increased benefit of more drilling will save us 3 cents a gallon in 2 decades. That's not very promising for people who have to rely on the automobile for all kinds of things in their lives. So continuing to subsidize oil companies only increases our dependence on dirty fuels, and even as our children pay a heavy price for asthma victims, other respiratory problems, it keeps us on a dead-end road to sky-high energy bills, more oil spills like the one we saw in the Gulf, and dangerous pollution levels. Investing in clean alternatives to oil, cars that go further on a gallon of gas, and smarter transportation like mass transit are the only realistic solutions to our energy challenges. And beyond clean energy investments, we should take the $4 billion we give away to big oil each year and use that money to pay down our deficit. It's pretty clear that we cannot restore fiscal sanity to our government unless we start paying more attention to the revenue column in our ledger. Now, I was a CEO for many years, and as I said earlier, I know that you can't run a company or a country without a strong revenue flow. Ending the government's wasteful oil industry subsidies won't be enough to erase our deficit, but it's a good place to start. So at this point in time, I call on my colleagues, have a citizen heart Look at this thing as you would any other obligation that you have in your life. And make sure our country is strong and that our middle class and our modest class earners can look ahead at a decent life for themselves and educating their children and protecting their parents with proper health care. Get big oil off of the welfare rolls. Let's end the industry's tax breaks and break our country's addiction to oil and other dirty fuels. So let's invest in clean energy, smart transportation, cut the windfalls for the oil industry lobbyists and lawyers. And I want to make sure, and I'm sure all of us down deep do, make sure our children, our grandchildren inherit a country that's fiscally sound and morally responsible. Mr. President, with that, I yield the floor. Call the roll.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
10 a.m. That's 2011. Senate proceed to executive session to consider calendar number 31, that there be 2 hours for debate equally divided in the usual form. Upon the use or yielding back of that time, the Senate proceed to vote without intervening action or debate on calendar number 31. The motion reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate, that no further motions be in order to the nomination. Any statements related to the nomination be printed in the record, that the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action, and the Senate then resume the legislative session.
Without objection.
I now ask, Mr. President, consent the Senate proceed to calendar number 41, S-498.
The clerk will report.
Calendar number 41, S498, a bill to ensure objective, independent review of task and delivery orders.
Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the measure.
I stand as consent the committee report and amendment be agreed to. The bill as amended be read a third time passed. Motion to reconsider be laid on the table. There be no intervening action or debate. And any statements relating to this matter appear in the record at the appropriate place as if given.
Without objection.
I ask consent that the Intelligence Committee be discharged from further consideration of S-Res 86.
The clerk will report.
Senate Resolution 86, recognizing the Defense Intelligence Agency on its 50th anniversary.
Without objection, the committee is discharged and the Senate will proceed to the measure.
I ask unanimous consent the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, the motion reconsider be laid on the table. There be no intervening action or debate. And any statements related to this matter appear at the appropriate place in the record as if given.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent that we now proceed to S-Res 181, 82, and 183, and we do that en bloc.
Without objection, the Senate will proceed en bloc.
I ask unanimous consent that the resolution be agreed to, the preambles be agreed to, the motion reconsider be laid on the table en bloc, with no intervening action or debate, and any statements related to this matter be placed in the record at the appropriate place as if given.
Without objection.
I ask consent that we now proceed to H. Conres 16.
Clerk will report.
H. Conres 16, concurrent resolution authorizing the use of the Capitol grounds for the Greater Washington Soapbox Derby.
The Senate will proceed. Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the measure.
I ask unanimous consent that the current resolution be agreed to, the motion reconsider be laid on the table, there be no intervening action or debate, and any statements relating to this matter be placed in the record at the appropriate place as if read.
Without objection.
I ask consent now, Mr. President, we proceed to H. Conres 46.
The clerk will report.
H. Conres 46, concurrent resolution authorizing the use of the Capitol grounds for the National Peace Officers Memorial Service.
Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the measure.
I ask unanimous consent that concurrent resolution be agreed to. Motion reconsider be laid on the table. There be no intervening action or debate. Any statements relating to this matter appear at the appropriate place in the record as if given.
Without
I
objection.
now ask we proceed to H. Conres 50.
The clerk will report.
H. Conres 50, concurrent resolution providing for a conditional adjournment of the House of Representatives.
Mr. President, I
Without
ask,
objection, the Senate will proceed to the measure.
and I ask that that matter that we receive from the House, which is at the desk, that the current resolution be agreed to, the motion reconsider be laid on the table, there be no intervening action or debate.
Without objection.
I am told there are 2 bills at the desk due for their first reading.
The clerk will report.
H.R. 1229, an act to amend the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act and so forth and for other purposes. S. 990, a bill to provide for an additional temporary extension of programs under the Small Business Act and so forth and for other purposes.
Mr. President, I now ask for second reading en bloc, but I object to my own request en bloc.
The objection is heard.
I now ask unanimous consent.
The bills will be read the second time the next legislative day.
Pardon my interruption, Mr. President. I now ask consent that the appointment at the desk appear separately in the record as if made by the chair.
Without objection.
I ask consent that when the Senate completes its business day, adjourn until 2 p.m. on Monday, May 16th. Following the prayer and the pledge journal proceedings be approved today, the morning hour be deemed expired, and the time for the two leaders be reserved for the use later in the day. Following any leader remarks, the Senate proceed to a period of morning business for debate only until 5 p.m. Senators permitted to speak for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
The next roll call vote will be around noon on Tuesday, May 17th, on the confirmation of the nomination of Susan Carney of Connecticut to be a United States Circuit Court Judge. Senators are encouraged to come to the floor on Monday to debate the Carney nomination. Mr. President, I believe there's no further business come before the Senate. If that's true, and I believe it is, I ask that we adjourn under previous order.
The Senate stands adjourned until 2 p.m. on Monday.
Oh, boy.
So that wraps up another day for the U.S. Senate. Lawmakers approved Michael Urbanski's nomination to be a judge for the Western District of Virginia.